Far beyond the familiar skies of Earth, there existed a vast alliance known as the Concord of Harmonies. For thousands of years, the Concord had guided countless civilizations toward peaceful coexistence. They believed that the strongest force in the galaxy was not power or wealth, but understanding. Their greatest achievement was the creation of the Matchmaker network, a system that studied emotional patterns, cultural values, and psychological structures across intelligent species. Instead of focusing on weapons or trade, the Conquered sought connection. They believed that if species understood one another deeply enough, war would become unnecessary. The Matchmaker network was operated by beings who called themselves harmonists. They were scientists, diplomats, and philosophers all at once. Using advanced scanning technology, they analyzed more than 10,000 intelligent species. Every civilization they studied had unique strengths. Some species were logical to a level humans could barely imagine. Others communicated through music or color or shared dreams. Some had perfect memories, while others felt emotions in powerful waves that could influence those around them. Despite the diversity, the harmonists kept encountering the same problem. Most species struggled to connect with those too different from themselves. Logical races found emotional species overwhelming. Emotional races felt misunderstood by analytical ones. Many civilizations had evolved in isolation, developing communication methods that made cooperation difficult. Even when alliances formed, they often broke apart because deep emotional compatibility was missing. After centuries of research, the harmonists began searching for a connector species, one that could bridge gaps between others. They needed a civilization capable of adapting to many environments, understanding conflicting viewpoints, and forming bonds despite differences. They scanned thousands of candidates, but none achieved the level of compatibility required. Then one day, a small human exploration probe drifted into conquered territory. The probe itself was simple compared to conquered technology. It carried basic sensors, a library of human culture, and recordings of music, art, and stories. At first, the harmonists assumed humanity was just another young species exploring space. They added humans to the database without much expectation. But when the Matchmaker network processed humanity's emotional profile, something unexpected happened. The system flagged the results with a classification never used before: perfect. The word appeared on the central display, glowing softly but firmly. At first, the harmonists thought it was an error. No species had ever received such a designation. They ran the scan again. And again, each time the result remained the same. Humanity was labeled as perfectly compatible. News spread quickly across the Concord. Councils gathered, and debates filled the halls of the great station orbiting a distant star. Some believed the algorithm had malfunctioned. Others worried that labeling one species as perfect could disrupt political balance. Many were simply curious. The harmonist Leah was among those assigned to investigate further. Unlike many of her peers, she approached the discovery with open curiosity rather than fear. She studied human history carefully. She saw stories of conflict but also reconciliation. She saw how humans formed families, friendships, and alliances across cultures. She saw acts of kindness performed even in difficult times. Humans fascinated her because they did not fit into a single category. They were capable of logic and emotion, caution and bravery, individuality and cooperation. They often disagreed with one another yet still found ways to work together. Their contradictions made them difficult to predict, but they also allowed humans to adapt in ways few species could. After reviewing the data, Leah made a bold suggestion to the council. Instead of studying humanity from afar, they should initiate direct contact. Only through interaction could they understand why humans received the highest compatibility score. The council agreed to a limited first contact mission. On Earth, Elias Ward lived a quiet life as an astrophysicist. He worked late nights at a small observatory, watching distant stars and analyzing faint signals from deep space. He loved the quiet moments when the world felt still. Elias did not sleep much during the journey to the Concord's central station. Even though the ship moved smoothly and silently through space, his mind was restless. The stars outside the viewing panel stretched into long lines of light each time the vessel entered faster travel. He knew he was leaving behind everything familiar. Earth was becoming a small blue memory far behind him. Leah often stood beside him during those quiet moments. Her form shimmered softly, made of flowing light patterns that shifted with her thoughts. She explained things patiently, using simple words so he could understand. She told him that many species feared first contact. Some believed humans would bring instability. Others believed humans would bring change they could not control. Elias listened carefully. He understood fear. Humans had feared each other many times in their history. He knew that fear often came from not understanding something new. When the conquered central station finally came into view, Elias felt both small and amazed. The station was enormous. It surrounded a bright white star, with rings layered one above another like a floating city of light. Each ring had different colors and textures. Some glowed blue and soft. Others shined with sharp crystal shapes. Some looked like flowing water trapped in motion. "That is home for many worlds," Leah said calmly. The ship slowed and entered one of the outer rings. The docking chamber adjusted automatically to Earth-like conditions so Elias could breathe comfortably. The doors opened with a quiet hum. For the first time, Elias stepped into a place where hundreds of alien species moved freely together. He saw tall beings with transparent skin that shimmered like glass. He saw small floating creatures that moved through the air without wings. He saw beings who communicated through pulses of color across their bodies. Some species walked on four legs, others hovered, and some seemed to ripple like living clouds. Many turned to look at him. Some observed him with curiosity, others with caution. Leah walked beside him as a guide and protector. She introduced him to the Harmonist Council members who had gathered to observe the first human arrival. They stood in a large chamber shaped like a circle, designed so that no one stood above another. An elder Harmonist spoke gently. "Human Elias Ward, welcome to the Conquered. You stand here because your species has received the highest compatibility reading in our history." Elias nodded slowly. "I still do not understand what makes humans so special." "That is why you are here," the elder replied. The trials began the next day. The first trial was simple. Elias was placed in a shared space with a species known for pure logic. They valued order and reason above all things. Emotional expression was rare among them. Their communication was direct and exact. At first, the conversation felt stiff. The logical beings asked Elias detailed questions about human decision-making. They pointed out inconsistencies in human history. They questioned why humans sometimes acted against their own interests. Elias did not defend humanity blindly. He admitted human flaws. He explained that humans often struggled with fear, pride, and misunderstanding. But he also explained that those same struggles led to growth. Humans learned from mistakes. They changed laws, they apologized, they tried again. One of the logical beings paused. "You admit weakness openly," it said. "Yes," Elias answered simply. "We are not perfect." The being processed this carefully. "Your willingness to admit imperfection increases trust." The observers recorded a rise in compatibility signals. The second trial involved a species deeply emotional and sensitive. They felt every interaction strongly. Even small misunderstandings could cause distress. In the past, they had struggled to cooperate with more direct civilizations. When Elias entered their environment, he noticed the lighting shifted with their mood. The room glowed softly in warm colors but flickered when tension rose. One of the emotional beings hesitated before speaking. "Are humans easily offended?" "Sometimes," Elias admitted, "but we also learn that different cultures speak in different ways." The being expressed worry about being misunderstood by others. Elias listened without interrupting. He did not rush to give advice. He simply allowed the being to share its concerns. After a long pause, the emotional being said, "You listen without judgment." "My planet is full of different opinions," Elias replied. "If we did not learn to listen, we would never cooperate." Again, compatibility readings increased. As days passed, Elias moved from one environment to another. In one ring, gravity was lower. In another, sound carried differently. Each species presented unique challenges. Some asked philosophical questions about human morality. Others asked practical questions about human cooperation. Elias did not try to impress anyone. He answered honestly. When he did not know something, he admitted it. When he disagreed, he explained calmly. Leah observed closely. She noticed something important. Humans did not approach differences as threats. They approached them as puzzles to understand. However, not everyone was pleased. The Pure Harmony Coalition began spreading doubt among the council members. They argued that humans were unpredictable. They showed historical records of human conflicts. They warned that emotional depth could lead to chaos. A representative of the coalition confronted Elias publicly. "Your species has fought many wars. Why should we trust you to bring harmony?" Elias felt the weight of the question. He did not deny human history. "We have fought," he said quietly. "But we also rebuilt. We created peace agreements. We learned to cooperate across nations. We are still learning." The chamber grew silent. "Our history is not only conflict," Elias continued. "It is also forgiveness." Some council members shifted thoughtfully. Leah later told Elias that his answer had created a strong emotional response among several species. They admired honesty more than perfection. The final stage of Part 2 began with a complex simulation. Multiple species were placed together to solve a shared problem. It involved stabilizing a fictional energy grid that required cooperation across very different communication styles. But before the simulation could begin, something went wrong. The station lights flickered. Communication panels malfunctioned. Environmental controls in one ring began to fail. The simulation turned into a real emergency. Tension rose quickly. Some species accused others of sabotage. Old disagreements resurfaced. Voices grew sharper. Emotional beings became overwhelmed. Logical beings demanded strict order. Elias stood in the middle of growing confusion. He looked at Leah. "Is this part of the test?" She hesitated. "No, this is real." Security systems struggled to restore balance. The coalition used the chaos as proof that diversity caused instability. Elias felt fear for the first time since arriving, but he also remembered Earth. He remembered times when cities faced disaster. He remembered how humans sometimes came together during crises. He stepped forward into the central chamber and raised his voice clearly. "Everyone, please listen." Some ignored him at first, but Leah amplified his voice through the chamber. "We can argue later," Elias said. "Right now we have a problem to fix." A logical being demanded precise instructions. An emotional being expressed panic. Another species refused to cooperate with an old rival. Elias did something simple. He asked each group to explain what they needed. The logical species needed stable calculations. The emotional species needed reassurance. The aquatic species required specific environmental adjustments. Instead of choosing one over another, Elias encouraged them to share their needs openly. "You do not have to agree on everything," he said. "But we all want the station stable." Gradually, tension lowered. Leah helped coordinate technical efforts while Elias continued encouraging communication. He repeated ideas in ways different species could understand. He acknowledged fears without dismissing them. Minutes turned into hours. Slowly, systems came back online. When the crisis ended, the chamber was quiet again. Observers checked the compatibility network. The signal was stronger than ever before. Human presence had not increased chaos, it had reduced it. The Pure Harmony Coalition could not ignore the data, but they did not surrender easily. They requested one final evaluation before any official decision. As Elias returned to his quarters that night, he felt exhausted. He wondered whether he had truly made a difference or if events had simply worked out by chance. Leah appeared beside him, her light softer than usual. "You changed the outcome," she said gently. "I only asked them to talk," Elias replied. "That is precisely why the algorithm labeled humans as perfect," Leah answered. Elias looked out at the distant star glowing beyond the station's shield. He realized something important. Humanity was not perfect because it lacked flaws. It was perfect because it kept trying. And the final decision of the conquered was still ahead. The crisis on the station changed everything, but it did not end the debate. For several days after the systems were restored, the conquered remained divided. Data from the Matchmaker network showed that compatibility levels had increased dramatically during the emergency. Cooperation between rival species had improved while Elias was present. Emotional stability across the rings had risen instead of falling. The numbers were clear. But politics was rarely decided by numbers alone. The Pure Harmony Coalition requested a final assembly. They argued that a single crisis was not enough proof. They feared that if humans were declared the central connector species, the balance of influence within the conquered would shift forever. Elias was invited to attend the assembly, though he had no voting power. He stood beside Leah inside the grand circular chamber. Hundreds of representatives filled the tiers around them. The chamber lights dimmed to a soft silver, signaling the beginning of formal debate. An elder from the coalition spoke first. His species was ancient, known for strict order and tradition. The human has performed adequately, the elder said. However, adequacy is not perfection. Humanity's history contains conflict, division, and instability. We must not ignore this. Murmurs moved through the chamber. Another representative stood. No species is without conflict, she said calmly. The question is not whether humans have struggled. The question is whether they can unite others despite struggle. The coalition elder responded, or whether their unpredictability will spread instability across our alliance. Leah stepped forward, her light steady and focused. The designation perfect does not mean flawless, she said clearly. It refers to compatibility. The human emotional structure allows flexibility. They adjust to different communication systems. They admit error. They learn quickly. During the recent emergency, the human reduced tension rather than increasing it. She gestured toward the central projection field. Scenes from the crisis replayed above them. Elia's listening to the emotional species. Elia's translating instructions between logical and artistic civilizations. Elia's encouraging cooperation instead of blame. The data streamed beside the images, trust levels rising, conflict signals decreasing. Still, the chamber remained divided. Before a final vote could be called, a high-priority alert interrupted the assembly. A distant star system on the edge of conquered space was destabilizing. Two rival civilizations had attempted a joint energy experiment to power their shared region. The experiment failed. Their star's outer layer was reacting unpredictably. Evacuation efforts had stalled because the two civilizations blamed one another for the failure. Old distrust had returned instantly. If cooperation did not resume quickly, millions would lose their homes. The chamber fell silent. This was not a simulation. This was real. The elder from the coalition spoke sharply. We cannot risk further chaos by sending an unproven species into such a delicate situation. Another council member countered, we have already seen what the human can do. Leah turned toward Elias. This is not part of the planned evaluation, she said quietly. Elias looked at the projection of the unstable star. He saw evacuation ships halted in orbit. He saw communication signals flashing in disagreement. He swallowed slowly. Send me, he said. The chamber reacted with surprise. You are not trained in our technology, the coalition elder warned. No, Elias replied honestly, but I understand fear and pride. And how hard it is to admit fault. The council hesitated only a moment longer. The situation allowed no time for endless debate. A joint rescue vessel was prepared, and Elias boarded alongside Leah and representatives from several species. The journey to the unstable system was tense. Reports showed worsening stellar flares. Evacuation routes remained blocked because each civilization refused to follow the other's safety calculations. When they arrived, the scene was alarming. The star glowed unevenly, pulsing brighter in dangerous bursts. Massive structures orbited the planet below, filled with civilians waiting for transport. Inside the command station, the two rival leaders stood on opposite sides of a central table. One species valued precise mathematics above all else. The other relied on instinctive energy sensing and intuitive prediction. Each believed their method was superior. You caused this instability, one leader said sharply. Your miscalculations began the chain reaction, the other responded. Elias stepped forward carefully. Excuse me, he said in simple, steady English. Both leaders turned toward him with visible doubt. I am not here to judge who is right, Elias continued. Right now, people are waiting to be evacuated. Can we focus on that first? The mathematical leader crossed its arms. Our projections show that following their method will increase risk. The intuitive leader shook its head. Their rigid formulas ignore subtle fluctuations we can sense. Elias took a slow breath. On my world, he said, we have scientists and artists, engineers and musicians, different ways of thinking. Sometimes they argue, but when a bridge is collapsing, they work together. He turned to the mathematical leader. Can your calculations include their sensory data as variables? The leader paused. It would complicate the model. Complicated is better than divided, Elias replied gently. He then faced the intuitive leader. Can you share your energy readings in measurable patterns so their system can analyze them? The intuitive leader hesitated. We have never translated them that way. Maybe now is the time, Elias said. Silence filled the room. Outside, another solar flare erupted, shaking the station slightly. The urgency broke the pride. Slowly, both leaders nodded. Teams began merging their data. Mathematical models expanded. Intuitive readings were converted into new parameters. Communication channels reopened. Elias did not command the operation. He walked between groups, repeating explanations, clarifying misunderstandings, encouraging patience. When frustration rose, he reminded them of the civilians waiting below. Hours passed. The combined method worked. The star's instability began to slow. Evacuation routes stabilized. Transport ships resumed movement. Millions were safely relocated before the next flare could cause catastrophic damage. When the final ship cleared orbit, exhaustion filled the command center. The two rival leaders looked at each other, not with anger but with quiet recognition. We both misjudged, one admitted. We both contributed, the other replied. Elias smiled softly. You saved your people, he said. Word of the rescue spread quickly across the Concord. It was no longer theoretical data or controlled trials. A human had helped unite two ancient rivals during a real crisis. When the rescue team returned to the central station, the final assembly was called once more. This time, the chamber felt different. The elder from the coalition rose again. His voice was slower now. The human has demonstrated not perfection in power, but perfection in connection, he said. Perhaps we misunderstood the designation. Leah stepped forward one last time. Humanity is not perfect because it is flawless, she said. It is perfect because it bridges difference. Where others see opposition, humans often see possibility. The vote was called. One by one, the species of the conquered signaled their decision. The majority approved. Humanity would join the conquered as interconnectors, a role dedicated to fostering unity across cultures, mediating disputes, and strengthening alliances. Elias felt the weight of history in that moment. He was only one human. Earth was still young in galactic terms. But now humanity had a place among the stars. When he returned briefly to Earth to share the news, reactions were mixed. Some people were excited, some were skeptical, some were afraid. But slowly, training programs began. Human diplomats prepared to travel. Cultural exchanges were organized. Earth scientists collaborated with alien researchers. Artists shared music across species. Students learned about worlds they had once believed were only fiction. Leah remained as ambassador, working closely with Elias. Their partnership became a symbol of what the conquered hoped to achieve. One quiet evening, Elias stood once more at his observatory on Earth. The same stars shone above him, but now he knew they were not silent. He thought about the word that had started everything. Perfect. He understood now that it did not mean superior. It did not mean strongest. It meant capable of connection. Humanity's greatest strength was not technology or dominance. It was empathy, adaptability, the willingness to listen, the courage to admit mistakes and try again. Across the galaxy, new alliances formed. Old rivalries softened. Not because humans forced peace, but because they helped others understand one another. And in the vast darkness of space, that simple ability became the brightest light of all.